My name is Tweet Thornton. I am the administrator here at the Publicity Club of Chicago. And welcome to Virtual Networking and Job Hunting with Batt, Rena Ramirez, and DeRondal Bevly. Thank you to our sponsor, News Exposure. These webinars would not be possible without their support. And thank you as well to their CEO, David Lasker, who I see in attendance here today. These webinars would also not be possible without the support of our members. Thank you very much. Many of you here are members as well. For more information about membership, please reach out to me. I can be reached at office@publicity.org. With that, I want to go ahead and turn it over to our moderator for the day, DeRondal Bevly. DeRondal is one of our board members as well. And DeRondal, let's get started.
All right, thank you, Tweet. Appreciate that. Good afternoon, all. As Tweet said, my name is DeRondal Bevly, and I am proud to be a PCC board member and with you on this journey today for the next 45 minutes, hour or so. We have two great panelists that are with us today that are going to help us walk through this new space we're in as a result of coronavirus. We have Batt from PR Talent and Rena Ramirez from Forte. Before I get started with some kind of opening remarks and we get the conversation going, I think it's probably best to let our panelists introduce themselves. So we're going to start with Rena. Rena, just give us a little bit about you and your background. We'll allow Matt to do the same, and then I'll get us kicked off.
Sure, thanks for the intro. My name is Rena Ramirez. I'm a senior account director at Forte. I work on various accounts from food and beverage to health and wellness, as well as with our marketing efforts and new business development for the company. Prior to merging my practice in November 2018, I had my own boutique PR agency servicing lifestyle clients for 9 years in San Francisco. And Forte is a full service agency with offices and headquarters in San Francisco, as well as an office in New York.
All right, great. Thank you for being here. Matt?
Great, Batt. I am managing director, of the central region here for PR Talent, and we are one of the largest focused specifically on PR and communications positions. We've got 9 recruiters throughout the U.S. So I spent 20 years practicing. 7 years had my own consultancy, and most recently was at Zeno Group, managing a number of consumer accounts and teams there. So the last year I've been a dating service for the PR industry, really in regards to connecting the dots with opportunities, both full-time and contract, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a minute. But I'm excited to be here, as excited as we can be right now. And I appreciate PCC for inviting us here.
Absolutely. And as again, I thank both you and Rena for being here and joining us. And I too extend additional thanks to PCC for this platform and this time for this great conversation. So as I started at the beginning, DeRondal Bevly, I am the managing director and founder of RubyRose Strategies, a small consultancy that focuses on strategic and crisis communications here in Chicago. I have been a comms professional for about 15, 16 years and running RubyRose for the last, I think we approach our 5th anniversary this year. So I'm very, very proud of that. But as a solopreneur, both of these topics that Rena and Matt are both going to dive into today are both not only very important to me, but also in my network. So before we start with Rena on the topic of networking, one of the things that has been very helpful for me is board service. I currently, in addition to being a PCC board member, I'm a Leadership Greater Chicago Fellow, and I serve on the boards of Forefront and as the president of the Western Michigan Alumni Association, back where I went to school in Kalamazoo. Those experiences have really helped me, especially in this digital age, extend and expand my network and be able to find some depth in some additional ways and be able to connect with people that I may not be able to have the time or bandwidth in the traditional space. So, Rena, you wrote a great blog post a couple of weeks ago about virtual networking in this time that we're all in and trying to adapt to. Can you give us a sense of what you're seeing in that space, and maybe start with some best tips and practices that you're seeing now?
Sure. So I think a lot of us are feeling a little anxious about the current state of the world, and rightfully so. And I think for a lot of us who have had, pretty predictable day-to-day work lives are now being, everything has been upended. And I think there's a huge sense of a loss of control. At least personally for me at the beginning of this. What do we do? What's the next best way to continue not only my personal life as close to what it was before, but also continue to do a great job at work and to network and continue to grow the business as much as possible. And one of the things that I've really noticed is that there are a ton more opportunities, specifically on LinkedIn and social media, that weren't necessarily there before. So I'll give you a great example. As I do my work, I constantly refer to LinkedIn. I've got my LinkedIn and my Twitter feed running beside my Slack and my emails, and I'm constantly searching through to see what people are posting in terms of content and queries. Airbnb is a really great example. For those who maybe want to get into that space, I know that they're having some issues right now with the business model and whatnot, but executives were posting, reaching out and saying, "Hi, I'm at home. I'd love to meet someone new. If you guys want to reach out and Zoom and network, drop me a line." So I did, and I ended up talking to an executive in their experiences department who I may not have had that opportunity before. A lot of companies are hosting open Zoom lunches, so companies that you may not have any contacts at before, HR, recruiting people that maybe you didn't quite know how to make that intro. They are hosting open webinars for anyone to join. And I think that these opportunities, while you may have been able to find them in other ways, are not so prevalent or at least open to everyone. So I would really encourage, especially new graduates, to make sure their LinkedIn profile is up to date, make sure that they're combing through social media every day. I try to make it a rule of thumb to set up 3 virtual lunches or happy hours or coffees, 3 people every week. And this is really muscle memory that you have to ingrain into your everyday work practice, because whether or not this goes back to normal, whatever that looks like later on down the line, your network and your connections will sustain you. One last point I want to make, and something that I didn't touch on my blog post, was I started my PR practice at the very time of the last recession in 2009. And at that point, people were losing their jobs in the public relations sector, certainly quite a bit. And so it was a sink or swim situation. And it was, how am I going to make a living? And so the option to use your network to forge relationships and to create, sustaining business practice for yourself is very much alive. And I fully expect that will happen again for many PR professionals as we sort of navigate the new normal and what employment is going to look like in the coming months.
All right, and I think that's a great segue into Matt. Matt, I was thinking, as I looked at, as we think about the world and how it's changed, I took a look at the advertisement that they sent out for this particular event, and I noticed I look completely different. And so not only are the ways that we're networking and perhaps grooming habits and office setups have changed, but the workplace and different jobs and different types of opportunities are changing. Can you give us a sense of what you and the folks over at PR Talent are seeing in terms of how jobs in the workforce has evolved over the past couple of months?
Yeah, the last 6 weeks have been interesting, and one of the things that I've been talking a lot. So we actually sponsored the PR Week salary survey, and that just came out last week. So ironically, an industry ready to move on a big upswing, is the first lead-in sentence, and how things have changed, right? Things have certainly changed in the last 6 weeks. We just wrote a blog post recently called Life in the Slow Lane, but how to merge back into that fast lane. And we are in a slow lane, and I think Rena touched on it herself, but we're in an industry that is as resilient to what we're experiencing as any. And there's different forms of communications that are extremely important right now. Internal comms, strategic comms, crisis comms, even on the digital side. One of the things that we've seen in regards to opportunities over the last 6 weeks are those who do have a lot of experience, for instance, in the digital side or with working with influencers. Because think about that influencer world, right? Is that influencer world is 24/7 now, and those bloggers and vloggers and YouTubers and such. I mean, they're staying extremely active. Now that said, brands and agencies and organizations need to be sensitive about that. So, real quick, 10,000-foot view on what we're seeing. There's 3 stages of this, and Rena mentioned that she had started her practice right in the middle of the 2008-2009 recession. I was in the same boat. And, I started my practice at that time as well. And, you need to use this time. It is downtime for some of us. For some of us, we're working remotely. Maybe we're working around the clock, depending on what industry you're in. If you're a recent grad coming up, graduating senior, you're looking for a job, right? So you got to stay active, and you also need to use this time to reinvent yourself. So one of the things that we're seeing across the board, sure, there are 3 stages of what we're experiencing. The one is the layoffs, and I think we have to be addressing that, every day, every week. Those numbers are in not just layoffs, but obviously the furloughs as well. So that's the stage that we're in right now. And honestly, we don't have a crystal ball, but I think we're looking at that stage probably being through the summer, to be realistic. I think that a lot of organizations are going to use this time to kind of look at the makeup of their organization and their teams and understand, what's necessary, what isn't necessary maybe at this time. The next stage that we'll see, and honestly, I don't think we'll see it come back until we're in the office again, right? Until businesses are kind of back in the office. And that's, looking at scalable support. So if you have ever thought of, or are you open to, whether you're on the sidelines right now or you're employed, looking at that contracted freelance opportunities. Looking back at 2009, I was practicing, not a recruiter, but that's certainly what we experienced at that point in time in regards to recruiting, is an influx in contracted or freelance roles and opportunities. And then the third stage is obviously the rehiring process of full-time roles. Can't say for sure when that's going to happen, but if you've ever been open to contract work or freelance work, now's the time to really dig in and think about that. Put a business plan together. We talk a lot with our candidates and clients. We've talked to probably 6 to 8 a day, as we get through this and be as consultative as we can be. But we talk a lot about finding your passion goal. What makes you jump out of bed in the middle of this pandemic. And that could be something that you're doing in your job role right now. If you're not currently employed, it could be putting together a business plan. It could be, volunteering your time, providing maybe some pro bono support for those organizations that you really love and believe in. But you have to find that passion. And now is the time not to sit on the sidelines and be waiting for that curve to kick in again in regards to hiring or in regards to work, in regards to your current position. You have to reinvent yourself right now. You have to find that passion, especially during this time. So
that's very helpful. And I think I want to make sure that those of you who are following along with us, if you have any questions for any of us up here on the panel, please use the Q&A box. We want to make this as interactive as possible because we want this to be as valuable for you, a valuable resource for you rather. Matt, I'm going to keep it with you because we just had a question come in, and I know without, you may not have a lot of information, but based on the question, perhaps you can provide some guidance. What recommendations do you have for young professionals, 10 years or less experience, who have been recently laid off to navigate the current market?
Yeah, I mean, I think Rena touched on this on her blog post. She touched on it, a few minutes ago, but you have to stay active. And I've told, recent college grads who are graduating this May, you absolutely have to go back to the roots of networking. You have to, in particular, whether you're 1, 3, 5, 10 years out and you're currently unemployed, you have to go back to that informational interview. You know, you have to ask people in the industries and the roles, in the companies or brands that you want to be a part of, ask them for 5 minutes of their time. Honest to God, you know, regardless of the chaos that we're all experiencing, right? E-learning with our kids at home, if you have families, just working remotely, people have time. And I really believe that is that people have time to talk about what they're doing, to offer support, to offer any type of consultative, you know, feedback and advice. And it's kind of like pitching the media too. You know, the best way to get a story with somebody is to, you know, commend them on the great things that they've been producing, the great stories, the great videos they've been producing. Same goes for informational, you know, interviewing and networking. Is, you know, talk to them, say, hey, I'd love to be in your job and your position in 5 years. What do I need to do, and what have you done, and what have you accomplished that you might be able to provide some guidance and support right now? That is one of the most important things you can be doing right now. If you're on the sidelines, yes, refresh your resume, make sure it aligns with your LinkedIn profile, but most importantly, you have to be networking with those in your inner circle and outside of that circle. You have to extend yourself a little bit. Don't necessarily ask for entry-level positions to talk to. Talk to mid to senior level positions, because those folks will unequivocally spend that time. Don't ask for an hour. Ask for 5-10 minutes. They'll probably give you at least a half hour.
Great. And so, Rena, we're going to kick this back over to you. Taking what Matt just talked about, we had an additional question come in that asks, how do you recommend for freelancers to make their services known to agencies? So now in this space where we're networking virtually, can you again, you wrote the great blog post. Can you give us some additional kind of essentials or additional kind of strategies that, taking what Matt just talked about, but also the question that just came in about how people can start to take those and put them to perhaps into practice?
Sure. So I think everyone, and those who are employed as well, this is for those who have maybe never consulted or worked for themselves, I think now is a really good time to think about what are your strengths in terms of services. What can you offer an agency? Is it something out of the norm, or something maybe that you know would be very useful? For example, podcasts are really hot right now. Do you have editing skills? Are you really strong with social media? Are you a phenomenal writer? Putting together a short list, even a deck, if you don't have a website, and by the way, building a portfolio website in addition to your LinkedIn is probably a really good idea right now. But more importantly, I always say this to people starting out with their own businesses, you need to understand what your rate is. You need to think about, hey, what am I willing to work for? What is my hourly rate? And then make sure that when people ask, okay, I'm ready to hire you, you know, that you're ready to have that conversation, and you don't have to go back and say, oh, let me think about it. That you know what your services are, what your rate is, and also what your break even is for the month, and start thinking about, you know, how many clients on the side, or a side hustle, or, you know, how many clients can I reasonably service right now? So actually putting yourself into that entrepreneurial business mindset sooner than later is going to make you much more prepared when that opportunity presents itself.
Fantastic. And so in order to, and this is for either Matt or Rena, as this world has evolved, we had a question that came in about, do you have a preferred set of tools, perhaps interactive meeting platforms or other tools that help you, or Matt, in your case, your clients do their work and navigate and be able to pivot in this new landscape? You prefer
you know,
Zoom?
I'll answer that on my end, right? I mean, how many Zooms have you guys been on in the last, 5 weeks? To be honest with you, I didn't use Zoom a whole heck of a lot, prior to this at all, right? I used GoToMeeting, WebEx, a number of others. So, this is the new norm. It's interesting. I talked to somebody the other day, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. My lighting was terrible in here, right? So they're like, man, you really need to light up the front of your office there so you can see your face a little better. But to answer your question around tools, Zoom, GoToMeeting, we're using all of these, Google Hangouts even. If you're not tech savvy, it's time to jump on that wagon for sure. The one thing that I will say is the face-to-face Anytime you can do that, I know sometimes working from home, it's out of our comfort zone. We prefer just to jump on the audio. I really think it means a lot today, and I think it will continue is to be able to jump on. We always talk about this, with media tours and things in the industry. When you get face to face with somebody, things change, and this is the best that we can get. So we definitely need to leverage this type of technology versus maybe just phone calls.
Okay. And Rena, anything that you'd like to use as your go-to for type of tools?
I can't say enough good things about LinkedIn. I have invested in a premium account years ago, and it's one of the best tools I use. But also just knowing that social media, I can't stress this enough, is so important to keeping and making new connections. Personally, in the world of PR, I have been able to get quicker, faster responses from journalists, news producers, people at other companies via direct message than email. So if that's something that you're shying away from without being too aggressive, I really highly recommend using it. People are using Instagram, in my opinion, direct message more than text message sometimes, and they're a lot easier to get in touch with. So considering all of your virtual options beyond email is also really important.
And so I'm curious, Matt, jumping back to you in terms of what the marketplace looks like. I grew up and I cut my teeth in smaller shops. Like, for those in the Chicago area, I got to learn from Dennis Culleton and Tom Seraphin, and Carolyn Grisco and Glenn Harston, just great practitioners in the space. But those agencies and shops are a little bit on the small side. Can you give us a sense of perhaps of what you're seeing on the small side in terms of growth and opportunities, but also in some of the larger, more established, more corporate firms?
Yeah, so, not going to sugarcoat this, right? Is that, we've certainly seen a lot of furloughs and layoffs and internship opportunities, cut or postponed. I think part of the internship piece, by the way, once we get back into an office setting, I do think that will open up. It's hard to start and kick off and mentor and intern in this current environment. But DeRondal, to your question, we're seeing crisis jobs. We're seeing a lot of internal comms roles. And I say a lot very cautiously, but where we are seeing growth opportunities in regards to full-time are certainly in those areas. Definitely if you have crisis support, maybe it's been something you had to do, did a good job at it, maybe don't necessarily like it. There's a tremendous need for people that have gone through, change management or any type of crisis communications, reputation management. And then the internal comms piece is the big one, right? We forget, right? We have to be communicating on a regular basis with our internal communities, and that could be our employees, but as well as partners and things that are integral to your business. So I think, again, you just have to look at your experience, and it may not be on your preferred list, like here's the 2 or 3 things I'd really love to do, but it could be on your, I've done it and I've done a pretty darn good job at it. And I think you need to assess that, certainly different stages. If you're currently employed, you need to latch on to those longtime clients. One of the things I'm hearing from the big agencies is, yeah, it's a tough situation right now, but what they're seeing is those consumer clients who are doing the proactive product rollouts, things like that, are now leaning on the agency for more the corporate comms type of work. So I think if you have experience in a general corporate comms, internal comms crisis, you need to really elevate that and maybe even jump from the consumer side into the corporate side at this time. And to your point, with these smaller shops, there could be opportunities, right? There could be great opportunities. A lot of the smaller shops will work with contractors because it's a scalable, as we have work, and a lot of them have a lot of work right now. They're turning to contractors or freelancers to be able to support that work, because in 6 months from now, they're not sure what it's going to look like, right? So I think just having the ability to be a freelancer contractor, to jump into the industries or areas that we're seeing, opportunities, will be great. I also think restaurants, let's not forget about that, is that, a lot of them are open. We had the privilege of working with McDonald's on a roll or 2 And I do think that you're going to see organizations around food and restaurants, they're in crisis mode right now too. But when things open up, guess what? They're still going to be in crisis mode. They're still going to be active. And so all industries are not dry at all. They have all been impacted, but I think you have to continue to evaluate your experience, your skill sets, and where does that align with crisis, internal comms, corporate comms type of work.
Rena, this is for you, and I think I too switched over fairly recently to LinkedIn Premium, and I've already started to see that it has been very fruitful as a resource for me in my business and networking. The question from the audience, I know LinkedIn is great for getting info and exposure, but have you been able to secure business from it? Has it resulted in real revenue? So can you give us some sense around perhaps how you strategically use LinkedIn and perhaps offer some insight into how someone can use that as a funnel from turning virtual networking into real business opportunity?
Sure. I think, yes, we have been able to secure business leads through LinkedIn. What's most important, though, is the art of PR. Also, there's a fine line between constantly pitching your products and asking people to do favors for you, and also seeming really genuinely interested in your work and also caring about the person on the other side. So I want to caution that while LinkedIn is a great resource, there's a fine line between, bombarding your contacts with, hey, let's do business together, versus, for example, we have a cannabis client, and there is a phenomenal cannabis brand that's based in LA. And so I've recently started a conversation via LinkedIn with the CEO, producer. And so I'm hoping that an RFP will turn around from that. We've seen that happen a few times before through LinkedIn. Are you considering switching shops? If not, have you ever worked with a PR professional? Let's have a quick Zoom meeting. So yes, those things do translate into actual RFPs and dollars. But I also want to preface that there is a art to doing it, and to really think about why it is you're contacting that person first, and is this a really good fit for your agency before moving forward in those business conversations.
So let's keep it there, because I'm sorry, Matt, go ahead.
I was just going to say one thing to add to that. Empathy right now needs to be your singular focus. And I think to Rena's point, there's great opportunities to be consultative. I turned from a recruiter to a therapist, right? So the last 6 weeks, I have unequivocally been a therapist. I have 20 years of practice experience. How much have I talked about recruiting in the last, 6 weeks? Not much, yeah. Right? Is that we need to evolve in this time right now, and empathy is the number one thing we have to be sensitive of. We're all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat, right? So remember that is that of the unemployed, the looking for college grads, looking for jobs, they're in a different boat, and they're going to be a little bit sensitive in wanting to find that work. And I think right now we have to listen to them, we have to advise them, and you'll get through this. Of all industries, I'll say it again, PR and communications will be the most resilient through this. So I really honestly believe that we need to be effective communicators. It may not be as much with external, more on internal. But empathy is super, super important. So it's great to use LinkedIn and these tools to reach out. But you need to continue to be sensitive. And I think that sensitivity will continue throughout 2020, even as we get back into the office.
Rena, do you use anything in particular, any additional tools for managing your networking and your contacts, any type of CRM or any type of a system to help you, kind of manage contacts and strategically look at the chessboard in terms of how you're building contacts and relationships, and also how to, manage cultivating those relationships?
Yes, I do. And we do as a company at Forte. So we're a big fan of Airtable. That's where we put all of our new business leads. It's a program that helps you move things around, track it, and it works great with multiple collaborators. But in addition to Airtable, I personally have two additional lists. One is written every week, and then one is in my calendar of people that I need to follow up with. It's okay. I think one of the other things that you have to sort of understand is, while people are open to having conversations about recruiting and networking, some people just don't. Some people are not handling this time well. And so it's perfectly okay to get an email response that says, you know what, I would normally want to chat with you, but now is not the time. Okay, no problem. I'll circle back with you in 3 months. Put it on the calendar so that it's a to-do that you know on that day you are going to circle back with that person. So I think having multiple lists for me is really helpful, but Double Forte as an agency, we are a big fan of Airtable.
Okay. Matt, earlier we touched on a little bit about new graduates and college seniors and the environment that they're graduating into. Can you give us a sense? We had a question that came in rather from Anastasia. Are there any particular software certifications or classes that you would suggest new grads pursue during this time to make their skill sets competitive when hiring picks up again? Perhaps Google Analytics, Hootsuite, or perhaps something along those lines.
Honestly, we talked a lot about this as a PR talent team, and the research, social media, the analytics, the data analysis. That's huge, right? And we're going to come out of this, and those roles are going to be prevalent and still in drastic need. So yes, Google Analytics. I think I saw a post early on in this pandemic around taking online courses and getting certifications, with a number of the Ivy League schools. I think we're offering free courses. Use this time to better yourself. I don't want to be doom and gloom with the recent grads, but you're not going to be competing with someone that's been laid off that has 2 or 3 years of experience for that entry level role. You have to distance yourself from them and separate yourself. And I think part of that is looking at that digital side. I think anything you can do to get certifications around, even Facebook and Google, analytics and things, those would be fantastic. But I also think that the art, and I don't want to sound like a broken record, but the art of that informational interview, as a former SVP at Xena Group, I can't tell you on one hand how many, recent college grads were reaching out to me in my 3 years there. That is an art that goes a long way. And by that, you have to reach out to industries that you want to be a part of, in roles that you want to be a part of, and you have to just ask them about their day-to-day jobs and what advice would they give to you. Because guess what? As we come out of this and internship programs, come back and pop back, they're going to remember that conversation. So there's nothing better to do right now. Yes, do some certifications, get some additional education under your belt while you have the time. Find a passion. One thing, they've been asking me, what do I do if there's a gap between me and graduating and the end of the year? Volunteer. Use your expertise in roles for nonprofits, associations, those that really need it. Keep yourself fresh. And God forbid, if you have to go work at Walmart to pay off loans and to pay the bills, do it. But don't give up on the industry you've invested in. We will be coming back, and this boom will be amazing for all of us, I guarantee you.
And that's an interesting point about volunteering. I have noticed in my own practice and in my own connectivity that I have done and have recommended to some others in the same space do some pro bono consulting. And it has led to not only meaningful development of relationships, but also very interesting work that could potentially lead to some opportunities down the road. So I recommend that anyone who's considering that, taking that plunge of volunteering and pro bono consulting, do so, because it can be very enriching for both sides. Matt, keeping it with you, and I know I don't want you to prognosticate too much, but I'm just putting this futurist hat on you. Melinda wants to know, do you think offices in general on the other side of this will move to work as we knew it before, 50% remote, 50% in-house? Like, perhaps give us a sense of what you're seeing, or perhaps, what you think, kind of forecasting what the next normal may look like.
It's a great question. And, again, looking into the crystal ball a little bit, organizations, agencies, you would think after 9/11 and after some events that we've experienced in the last, 10 years plus, 2008, 2009 recession, you would think that we've figured out how to do the remote work. But I can tell you the first 2 to 3, 4 weeks of conversations were about those pain points. And the fact that organizations, haven't been able to figure this out, it's kind of mind-boggling, understand it, but I think, you know, organizations are going to absolutely need to offer a more flexible work environment. And, you know, when it comes to actually being back to work, sure, don't forget there's a risk for everybody, right? So there's a risk for organizations, companies, agencies to open back up again. God forbid someone gets sick, this comes back in the fall. So there's you know, legal reasons for considering what that new work environment looks like. But I think that the lesson that we have to learn through all this is just like with e-learning with anyone that has kids. You know, schools are figuring this out on the fly on how to do this. And I think organizations need to be putting together those best practices for business continuity plans, you know, as we move into this new norm, whatever that looks like. So working from home, without question, you know, my advice to any senior level folks that are on this, you have to be more flexible moving forward. If someone's sick, right, are you going to say, well, hey, you know, tough it out, whatever, if it's not that bad? No, we're going to now say you need to stay home for 10 days, right? So I think the new work environment, without question, has to be, you know, a 360 hybrid approach of being able to work from a home office. We've used the tools. Hopefully we've gotten up to speed on what the processes look like, what the systems look like to be able to do that. And I strongly encourage anyone, you know, from an employer standpoint to continue to move down that path. And I know there's a time and place to be in an office, in a meeting with a client, with a team. That still can't be replaced, but we need to figure out how to build this hybrid approach and be able to work remotely.
Right. Next question. I think both of you from your vantage points will be able to chime in and offer some assistance here. So Rena, I'm going to start with you. What do you recommend for someone unemployed with years of media relations experience who doesn't want to start their own business but work at a company? Are there certain positions that may be more attainable? So perhaps, Rena, you can kind of give us a sense from what you see in your space, but also perhaps how this individual could employ some strategic networking tips in order to find that role.
Sure. I think right now there's a lot of things that are being discussed at agencies, certainly with our own. You know, we are on a hiring freeze. I know a lot of the larger companies, if you were looking to go in-house at one point, they have also decided to go on temporary hiring freezes. So while that might be the case, it is absolutely important, as Matt has touched on, to send out your resume and really narrow down. I think this is also the time to be really picky. Everyone should be reevaluating their values and what's important to them. What are the companies that you really want to work with on the other side of this? And to keep in mind, you know, for example, I have a good friend that works at Cisco. You know, she interviewed, they rejected her 3 times before she finally got a job there, and she's been there over 10 years now. So understanding that rejection is definitely a part of finding your next job that might be a perfect fit, but also realizing that consulting is probably one of the safer ways to go in the next few years, if you can possibly do that part-time or on the side. And also you might, as Matt touched on, have to take a role that would not necessarily be of interest to you, or at a lower title, a lesser title than before, just to stay relevant and to be employed and to learn new skills. So we all have to be really flexible. And I think, you know, putting together your list of, you know, what are your must-haves in a job and what are things that absolutely won't fly with you, so you're really clear on what you'll be able to work with in these coming months, is really important.
Matt, any additional context around that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, someone that really, you know, paved a path in media relations, you know, in my career, that was my main focus, you know, national media relations in particular. But, you know, you're a good communicator, you're a good writer. I think the content creation, because the media relations landscape, I think it's opening up. I think, you know, there's definitely beat reporters now looking to cover you know, COVID related, you know, topics, but realize we have 2 crises, right? We have this pandemic and we have the economy, right? So the minute the pandemic is in the rearview mirror, at least for the unforeseeable future, we have the economy to look at. Point is that those media relations opportunities, they're going to open up. I think, you know, one of the things that we're seeing is former journalists, obviously we've seen that for years, transition over to media relations roles. But one of the things we are seeing with media relations professionals right now, when there is a cloudy, do I pitch? Is it the right time to pitch? Is it a good? Is there still content? There's a lot of content creation that needs to be done. And Rena hit on this, talking to those companies, if you're looking for that in-house role, working for brands that you really love, is there an opportunity to jump in and be a content creator for them as well? And that could be in the form of earned, it could be in the form of that owned. But I do think you need to explore, your ability to write effectively. And there's going to be contracted opportunities, freelance opportunities from a content creation standpoint, because I do think that coming out of this, that earned, owned, and paid, prongs, we're going to need to be able to play in each of those. So I think as a media relations professional, expand beyond maybe that pure media pitching, role, and think about some of the things you can do from a social standpoint, or how you could work more effectively in pitching and working with influencers, for example. But stay fresh. I mean, if you're on the sideline, we talk about blogging or doing things like that. Start a blog. Like start posting your stories on LinkedIn. In regards to the topics that are going on within the industry around us. Stay fresh. Stay current. The worst thing you could do is just be submitting resumes to a number of job opportunities. And by the way, the one thing I will say on that before I forget, if you see jobs posted on LinkedIn or Indeed, if you don't see it on the company or agency's site, there's a lot of jobs that are stale right now that are sitting out there. So don't want to give you a false sense of security that there's all these jobs on LinkedIn right now. Guess what? A lot of organizations didn't take it down, or they're still taking candidates in the funnel. Above all, don't jump into that resume submission process. Figure out who at that company, whether they're in accounting or legal or whatever, and network your way into that role. Use recruiters certainly like us to get to those hiring managers, but the worst thing you can be doing right now is just submitting your resume to multiple job opportunities. You have to validate the job, and number two is they're not even going to be looking at that broad pool of applications right now. They're going to be looking at who knows who could help fill this role or this opportunity for us. So you have to network your way into that opportunity. And that's what LinkedIn is about. That's what recruiters help you do. When you're doing informational interviews, ask for those connections. People will give those to you.
Right. Thank you, sir.
I just want to hop in here really quick. So this is an extension, in some ways, this conversation has been an extension of a panel discussion that we had at our career fair for the Publicity Club of Chicago last fall. Both Matt and DeRondal were on that panel. And another resource that was there that day was led by a longtime board member, Deb Lawrence. And I wanted to bring Deb on for just a second here, so that she can talk about what her group does and what she's also offering people to do. Deb, do I have you on?
You have me on. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, so thank you. Just want to introduce myself. My name is Deb Lawrence, and as Tweet said, I've been a longtime board member and executive board member of Publicity Club of Chicago, and you guys have been given such a tremendous amount of great advice today. I got involved with the Publicity Club of Chicago in 2008 and 9 and 10 when the last recession, the big recession was going on, and met an incredible number of people. So what my agency does, we're a nonprofit workforce agency that connects job seekers and employers at no charge because we're federally funded. And while I do not work for the state of Illinois, our nonprofit workforce agency shares space with the unemployment office. So think food court. like everyone else, we've had to quickly ramp up from in-person services to virtual services. And now we are offering virtual resume workshops, virtual interview workshops, how to have a successful virtual interview. And I might add that PR people have a little bit of a leg up because media training is very similar to successful virtual interview training. And I think earlier one of our panelists mentioned, you know, your lighting and that sort of thing. But anyways, our organization does pay for some certifications. So to support what was also earlier said today, you should check out what certifications may be paid for, and it's expanded from what it was literally 6 weeks ago. Again, volunteering is excellent advice. Flexibility, resilience is truly key. We have been working with employers and have literally had so many direct hires the last few weeks. It's incredible. But the real key is the ability for people to have a successful virtual interview. And I'm talking about everything from entry level warehouse positions on up to a controller and everything in between. So I'm happy to help or refer people. And I know that Tweed, you said you'll share our website and my email.
Yes, if anybody wants, that information is in the chat. If you look on the right-hand screen of, and also after this, please feel free to reach out to office@publicity.org, and that information will be shared there too.
Right, so what we can do is connect you to job seeker support services of all types. And that's pretty much my piece. I appreciate you allowing me to jump in here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Deb. So yeah, I think now we've got time for one last question. Although I will say to anybody that is looking to definitely take Deb up on our offer. And Deb has been such a great contributor and supporter of PCC over the years. She's a wonderful person to connect with.
So I will say, I know that we got time for one more. So what I will do is kind of a closing kind of question and statement for both Rena and Matt. In this landscape that we're in right now, we've shared some information with folks, and there's just a lot more out there. And hopefully for those of you who are following along with us, this has been helpful. And please, Rena, Matt, or myself, please connect with us on LinkedIn. Anything that we can do to be an additional resource outside of this, please connect with us to keep some of the conversations going. But my final questions to you, Rena, first, and then Matt. Wrap it up for us. You've both been in the game for a while. You've seen different sides of it. We have now. We talked about both of you starting agencies and experiences outside of during the recession. This is something in terms of economic fallout could be something similar, and we're starting to see that already. Can you give us a sense of kind of what's next, perhaps for you in your own practice or your agencies, your shops, or perhaps even the landscape itself? Just something that folks that are following along can have a sense of, what's next or what's on the other side, and how they can potentially position themselves to shine a little bit brighter on the other side of this.
Sure. Well, to wrap up, I want to say the squeaky wheel. The people that are persistent now, the people that are setting themselves apart now, that are being consistent with outreach, are going to get the next rounds of internships and jobs. I have interns that we interviewed in January, December, who are still following up with me today about those positions. So, the people that are consistent are the ones that are going to be considered first. In terms of what I expect from not only our agency, but the industry as a whole, is those that received paycheck protection and financial assistance will continue on with their employees as much as they can. But I fully expect another round of restructuring, if you will, to take place this summer. So think about how you not only can educate and improve yourself now, but how you can set yourself apart as a specialist. It is no longer helpful to be a jack of all trades. It is really important to think about yourself and to market yourself as a specialist. And what kind of special knowledge do you bring? In what form, in what industry, and how can you leverage that knowledge for an agency or a prospective hire or someone that might want to hire you as a contractor? So those are my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Rena. Matt?
I think, just a summary of my 6 weeks of conversations, as a psychiatrist, as well as a consultant and recruiter in PR Pro, is, hustle, but hustle with empathy. Honest to God, if you sit back and mope, it's easy to be down right now emotionally and such, but those that have that hustle, those that have the degree of empathy across the board, they're gonna rise to the top when we come out of this. And there's no question in my mind that the hustle is critical right now. And one of the things I brought up earlier is the passion goal, and it may not relate at all to your job search. It may not relate at all, to what you're doing, but you have some downtime. And I have to believe, unless you're in, a few specific, industries or roles, that you have some downtime and better yourself personally, physically, but also think about that passion goal. What's going to make you jump out of bed, right? We don't jump out of bed, antsy to do our job search, right? It's a necessary that we have to do. We have to stay out there. We have to keep that hustle alive. But please use this time to better yourself, to think about that passion that you can really wrap your arms around and own, right? If it's putting together a business plan on how you can get into that specialist category that Rena talked about, find some passion right now, because we all need to dig deep in this time. And I think if you could just wrap it around that passion, prioritize that passion as you come out of this, be flexible, but continue the hustle. I mean, so many people have said, well, I guess I'll just wait and see what happens in a couple months. Guess what? You're going to be at the absolute bottom of the pack. You got to keep your hustle alive, and we will get through this. I keep telling everybody, there will be a boom. When we did that PR Week salary survey, salaries were at the highest point. It was a competitive environment, and guess what? We're going to jump right back into that. How quickly, I'm not sure. I don't have the crystal ball on that, but we will jump back into it. And those of us that have hustled with empathy and believe enough in our passion and can continue to drive through that passion, either as a side hustle, as a nonprofit volunteering opportunity, those are the people that are going to rise to the top. And that's my best advice. Hustle with empathy right now. Great.
And I would like to just offer, if there are any people out there who are in a similar boat like myself, if you're a solopreneur or a consultant or perhaps thinking about consulting, I think this is a very interesting time for us as well. There are a lot of opportunities out there, depending on where you are, where you live, being involved in your local chamber of commerce. There are different groups, different economic opportunity corporations. Nonprofit and board service, I think, is absolutely fantastic and very fulfilling and enriching. If you join a nonprofit board to, first and foremost, hopefully out of service and connectivity to the mission, but you're also meeting 30 to 40 people that you would not have had the opportunity to meet before that are joined together under the connectivity of that mission. So that gives you 30 to 40 new people that you can work on your networking skills, where you can talk about how you can build genuine relationships. Because like you, Matt, I believe that communications professionals are incredibly important in this world. And the work that we all do collectively and individually will be definitely needed, definitely more so on the backside of this. So if you're a solopreneur or a consultant or thinking about consulting, if you want to reach out for any tips, please let me know. I'm happy to connect with folks, because I think it's an excellent time to do the work. And there's some opportunities for those who are nimble, but as both of my colleagues have stressed, if you're willing to hustle and put the work in, there are a lot of opportunities out there. Tweet's giving me the look, so that means that we have to wrap up. So I would like to thank Matt and Rena for just being excellent panelists here and providing just a wealth of information. As I stated before, if you're interested in connecting with us and continuing the conversation, please connect with us on LinkedIn. I think Tweet is going to also provide some additional contact information for us. We hope this has been helpful. Tweet's giving me the look again, so I'm going to stop talking. Tweet, any final words before we let the folks go?
No, yeah, a virtual round of applause, an actual round of applause for myself. I know everyone, I'm sure everyone at home is applauding too. I do want to highlight a couple of things also. The vice president of PCC has shared information in the chat. She is saying if there's any college students, they have internships for creative design and also digital and social media. Her contact information is on the side here. Also wanted to give a shout out to PCC President Jim O'Reilly on this call. We have PCC board member and communications chair, Bridget Hatch. Thanks again to Deb Lawrence, a longtime PCC member, board member, also Dominic Calabrese. I see here immediate past PCC president. Again, our thanks to David Lasker and News Exposure for their sponsorship of these webinars. The deadline for Golden Trumpet Awards is coming up. Please, check out the website for that. And one final thing, it has been said by others and myself that joining a committee at PCC and joining PCC membership is also a great launching pad for a career. So reach out to us, publicity.org, for all of that information. And my thanks to the panelists, and we look forward to hoping to see everyone soon.